All right, so this is going to be the 7 predictions for automation in 2019. What I think. Could be wrong, but basically what happens, I do this every year. I basically go to Google Trends and I look at certain trends for keywords like Selenium or a functional test tool like Cypress.io, and then I compare it over time to see if it's going up or down. So there's a bunch of different things I do to try to get a pulse on, what's popular or what do I see traction going between a certain tool or technique. I also talk to a lot of people on my podcast, Test Talk. So I'm constantly learning what people are struggling with or what they're talking about. And a lot of times, certain speakers will repeat things that other speakers have mentioned. And then I say, okay, wait a minute. Let me look that up if I've never heard of it and see if that's a growing trend or not. And basically, these 7 are a compilation of all those different pieces of information I slap together to get information. So if you don't know, this is Guild Conferences, and this is a test webinar to make sure my site is ready for the actual big event happening February 4th to the 6th, an online conference dedicated 100% automation testing called Automation Guild. Basically, we have some of the biggest top experts in the world join us to share a tip, tool, technique, or best practice to help you succeed with your test automation efforts. And I try to make it actionable. So things you could take away right away and help your teams and yourself with your automation. So I have a really good lineup. If you're in Guild Conferences now, after the webinar, if you go to Guild Conferences, you go to the conferences and go Automation Guild 2019, you'll see everyone that's speaking and what the different topics are. So let's just get it out of the way. First thing you probably heard all year so far, well in 2018, is AI test automation. At first I was thinking, this is ridiculous. There's no way this is a real thing. I don't believe it. But over 2018, after speaking with vendors, after speaking with a bunch of people on Test Talks, after taking a look at some of these tools, I really think there's a lot of benefit to these tools. And the reason why is one of the biggest struggles I've had with automation over, I'm going to age myself, maybe 20 years, is not only creating the scripts, but the maintenance of the scripts have been crazy. I was speaking to Dan Belcher, who's one of the co-founders from Mabel, and he told me before they even created a tool or thought of a solution, they interviewed about 100 companies and asked them just, out of the blue, what's your biggest struggle? Not telling them, here are your options. And almost everyone said maintenance was the hardest thing. And so because of maintenance, that's the reason why they created Mabel. And really the ability to maintain your test automation really has been the number one struggle I've had most of my career. How many times, for example, have your test scripts failed because someone changed the application under test, like the ID, and they changed it in the application, but they didn't make a change to the actual code itself? That causes issues because they didn't update the automation script, and so they updated the code, and then you need to go back and maintain the script. It's just a big pain. A lot of these new AI-based automation tools really were designed with this problem in mind to help you. For example, in that particular instance with AI, especially like with Mabel and Testum.io, when you run a test over time, it's able to identify different fields so that if someone changed a name, like change the ID, it's smart enough to go, okay, I know the ID changed, but I knew that this particular field is near these other fields, and it's able to self-correct at runtime. So it's able to take care of itself, and really a big time saver that way. So it's what I'm calling heal thyself automation. So it's really possible at runtime to self-heal because it's capturing all this. The AI really is just machine learning. So it's capturing every time it runs the HTML, the data, the images, the screenshots, the state of the pages. And so when it runs, it has all this history to look at to say, wait a minute, this is a little bit different. I know what it's looking for. I can't find it, but I can find these other elements to identify it. And you don't have to tell it anything. It automatically self-suggests at runtime. This is the quote from Dan Belcher that I was talking about, how they interviewed over 100 companies before they even decided what solution they were going to use. So really good stuff. And if you haven't known Mabel, what I thought was interesting, it's an AI-based automation tool. But Lisa Crispin, who wrote the book Agile Testing, one of the co-authors, actually works there now. So they really do believe in testing. So it's not AI versus tester type deal. So just something to know. Always good to know. Another thing I noticed, and obvious, is that most of these solutions I've been seeing are all paid solutions. And it's kind of like a seesaw. Before, when I started, it was all vendor-based tools. So we had Windrunner, Silk from Segway. I don't know if I have a book. Well, I did in my old library from Silk, but these old vendor-based tools, which were great, they worked, but you had to pay for them. And they got pretty expensive with licenses and everything. So that's why when Selenium came up, it was just people's minds were blown because Selenium is open source and free. And so people then merged from, a lot of them started moving from vendor-based to Selenium. And then all of a sudden the vendors supported Selenium and they merged together. It seems with this AI-based testing, we're going back in time almost to just vendors because I don't know any open source solutions as of yet. I know there's open source AI-based solutions for development, but I haven't seen any for testing per se. So if you're looking to get into AI-based testing, you probably need a budget. Just do a heads up. This probably will change over time. It's so new that it's just like it was back in the day with Mercury or HP, is that the open source solutions had to keep up with it. So it's probably going to be, I say, 2 to 5 years before we have a really full-blown, could be sooner, AI-based automation tool. So if you're looking to get into AI-based automation, I really think there's some ways it could save you time. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect or it's going to solve all your issues, but you're probably going to need a budget available to you. This is the first open source type of thing I saw was in 2018, end of 2018 at the Selenium Conf, and I think in Chicago. Jason Arbor open sourced a solution for Appium. He has a product called Test AI, which is a paid solution, but this one automatically allows Appium to do that sort of field recognition we talked about earlier, where at runtime it's able to self-correct itself. So that's an awesome first start, and hopefully people will start building up these solutions so that they become end-to-end solutions. So that if vendors' solutions are great. It's just a lot of times if you don't work for a large company, you just don't have the budget. In that case, you need some sort of open source solution. This is a great first start, I think. All right, this is one feature I really think AI was made for. And when I say AI, it's really just advanced machine learning statistics really, but able to do it more and more computer power and be able to, based on those statistics, make pretty good guesses or insights onto how to make adjustments to things. So when it's AI, it's not like HAL in Odyssey 2001, Space Odyssey 2001. It's not like that. It's more like I have all this data. Because I'm a computer, I'm able to read that data very quickly and make some sort of random inferences of what to do with that data. So AI automation assistance also is a huge win, I think. And what I mean by this is right now, I have, say, 2,000 automated tests. And we get a new build. And we get that new build and they say, run all the tests. And you're like, okay, but which test actually maps to what was checked in, what change was checked in? Like, I don't know, run every test. And that's fine, but if you have 2,000 tests and they're not necessarily all run 100% all the time perfectly, if one of those tests fail, it's hard really to know if there's a mapping. Let's say, because this test failed, I know the code checked in is broken. And a lot of times you end up spending time debugging the script to say, is this a real failure? Is it an automation script failure? Is it an actual application failure? And you just end up wasting a lot of time. You also start losing the confidence of your developers at that point. But with AI-based solutions, there are a lot of things coming out now where when you check in code, it knows, because it's looking, say, in Git or Perforce, whatever repository you're using, what code changed. And you could have an agent on your machine where you're running the test, and it's able to do the mapping to say, I know that this test touched this particular method, and this method is actually in that code that was checked in. So you're able to know using AI that, hey, that code you checked in, not only is there not a test for it, there's no test for it anywhere, you probably need to put a code for that method. Or even better is, this test failed in this method, and this method maps to that exact piece of code you checked in. And that happens instantly. There's tools like C-Lights. That was the other presentation you had an option for, which we could do at another time. But I think more and more of those types of tools are going to be available to give you that type of AI automation testing assistance. There's a free one, though, called reportportal.io, reportportal.io. And that's basically an AI-based dashboard where over time it's able to use statistics to say, hey, I saw this failure last time, and the reason was your environment was down. And it automatically can tag it as environment's down. So what it helps is, when you have a lot of tests that are failing, it takes a lot of time to triage that information. Using a solution like reportportal.io can use some AI-based learning to automatically do that triaging for you. So when a team logs in, they can see right away all the new issues that may not have been encountered before that has a known solution. Or a lot of times we'll have an open defect, right? I'll run my test suite every night and I go, why did this fail? And I forget, there's an open defect in it, right? Using reportportal.io, you could say, hey, this is a known defect. So when you run it next time, it automatically will map it to this is a known defect, so you don't have to spend any type of thinking on it or any type of research. So that's another awesome solution, I think. We're actually going to have a session on Report Portal at Automation Guild this year, which is going to be really good. Awesome. So Defect Crusher has used it. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. There's only one bug that has stopped me from using it, and it's just because I use JBehave, and the JBehave integration is kind of wonky. But other than that, if that was working, it really is awesome. I know people like Greg Pascal, who I know is on here, uses Kibana and Elasticsearch. We also use that, but to me, Report Portal is more geared towards specifically for automation engineers and testers, where Kibana, Elasticsearch is really for anything, and you have to design your dashboards and everything. So I really like Report Portal. Here's a great quote from Jason Arbon. Once again, he's the guy that co-wrote How Google Tests Software, and he's a serial entrepreneur. He started Test AI, which is an AI-based tool vendor, and also has been a frequent guest on Test Talks and my conferences. Ultimately, machine learning should be used for what it's good at, right? It's good at reading all the data that's being generated, things that you couldn't even do as a manual tester. There's no way you can go through, thousands of server logs while your tests are running and know, hey, in this server log, I noticed this error, and I'm able to map it right away to maybe a function or a method that's causing it. I don't think you'd ever, you probably could do it, but it would take you a lot of time. That's the type of AI I'm talking about that I think is really going to help automation. So it's not replacement. It's really just enhancement, man and machine together. And also, if everyone's used Apply Tools, I think that's a great model for what I'm talking about with AI. Apply Tools finds visual defects in your application. So what happens is you run your test, you take a screenshot of the way it should look, and you can say, yes, this looks correct. This is the way it should look, right? And so every time you run the test, it goes, do I look like that? Do I look like that? Yes, yes, no, right? No, okay. It flags an alert. It's an insight, and it tells you, hey, I found an issue. But you as a user need to go in and look at it and say, hey, actually that's a new feature that's been introduced in the sprint. I'm going to accept that as a new baseline going forward. Or, hey, these elements are overlapping. That's an actual visual defect. So although you didn't visually find it, the tool used it, you had to go in to make sure it was actually correct. So that's really the approach I think more folks are going to use. Iran Sheriff, this is the company I was talking about, Sea Lights, where what I was talking about, using AI to help manage your quality. So rather than just throw everything at the wall and say what passed, what failed, just being more strategic about it. To me, I know Jason's like, because of AI, you should be able to run tests everywhere, all of them, and just have it spin up to infinity. For me, I'd rather say you checked in this code A, right, and test Z and B cover that. And those pass, therefore, you can release it. Rather than let's run everything. Because in my experience, it's never that smooth. So that's why I think that's a great use of AI. All right, this could get me in trouble because sometimes I get, people fall in love with tools, and especially if it's an open source tool, people have committed a lot of time and effort to these tools, and they're awesome for it. Love the tool. This is not a dig on tools, but when I mention another tool, I'm not saying one tool is better than the other. All I'm saying is different tools for different people make sense. For example, if you have a team of folks that aren't really developers, and lots of times if you give them Selenium with Java, I bet you any money, if they have no development background, that's not going to be very successful. They may have better luck using a vendor tool like, say, Quick Test Professional, right? And if that, in that particular case, that instance, that might be the right choice. And that's cool. But if you have all alpha automation engineers, right, that are also developers, then they're probably going to like Selenium. But if you have really just developers with no automation engineers, they're probably going to like tools like Cypress.io, tools that are really geared more towards developers, or Jest, which is more like a JavaScript type automation framework for testing. It all depends. And I've been seeing more and more of these tools come out. And when I speak to them on test talks, not everyone is saying Selenium anymore. They're saying, hey, I'm a developer. I enjoy Cypress better. And that's great. So I just think you need to be aware of your situation. And there is not one tool that fits all teams. And it shouldn't be cookie cutter. You shouldn't go to a new company and automatically say, Selenium's the right solution. Selenium may not be the right solution. It may be the right solution, but maybe it's not. If you have all developers, you might want to try Cypress, because if you get true buy-in for developers, you'll be more successful with automation. It really is team specific, and I have special preferences myself, even language specific. I'd rather use Python, right? But people say you're nuts. Java is the way to go when you're writing a Selenium. So it's just like that. It's not meant to say, thou shalt do this. I just think there's going to be a lot more automation test tool diversity out there, especially as more AI tools come out there. I'm pretty sure a lot of them, like Mabel, don't even use Selenium under the covers. So something to be aware of. And once again, cheap, shameless plug. At Automation Guild, we have a few sessions on Cypress and Jest, which are more developer-centric type automation tools. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure to register at automationguild.com. All right, now this is kind of controversial also. As Jim Hazen says, it's not auto magic, right? So the tool is not magical, and which one you use is not one magical tool. You really need to focus on the tool that's right for you and your team and have realistic expectations. So once again, this brings us to record and playback. So back in the day, these vendors like Quick Test Professional and Windrunner would say, hey, you just record your script and you run it, and bam, it's magic. It'll always work. They never took into account different changes in your workflows or data changing that's hard-coded in the record and playback. Things like that made it very difficult for it to play back without using more of a developer-type approach. But I don't know if you noticed recently, Selenium IDE, which only supported Firefox up till maybe last year, they stopped in the latest version of Firefox. It was using some technology behind the scenes that Selenium IDE wasn't designed for. And there was no way to upgrade it. They didn't have any maintainers to upgrade it. So it basically died. I know a lot of companies use Selenium IDE and they loved it, but it only ran in Firefox. And once again, you had a lot of issues with the record and playback. I know a bunch of people came together, including vendors like Appley Tools, and they created a new tool, not a new tool, but a new implementation of Selenium IDE that's out there now. It's actually pretty cool. I tried it out. It has a really nice runner. I don't still think it can export things to code yet, but I think it's on its way. But what it can do is when you record, it will record the IDs it thinks are the best matches for you to use when you record and playback. But not only does it do that, it will record 9 other options. So it will record the CSS, the XPath, the name, the ID. And when you rerun it now, even though you chose, I want to use ID, if it doesn't find ID, it's like, okay, fine, I'll use one of these other options automatically. So on the fly, it's the self-healing type thing. Selenium IDE, the new version's doing that. So that's why I think that's the future. And that's going to save us a whole bunch of time and maintenance if more and more tools go this way. If you haven't checked out Selenium IDE, give it a try. Once again, I don't know if it'll work for everyone or it's the perfect solution for everyone, but what's really cool is, so you have people that aren't that very technical, but they do support for you, or even customers. So if there's a bug, a customer can record that bug, save it, send it to you, and you can play it back. So that's one use of this that I think could be kind of cool and good stuff. And this is Dave Heffner. Most of you probably know Dave Heffner. He's been in the community for a while. He's written some awesome training material and courses on Selenium. And he can actually see at some point Now, once again, Tools, it's not an Tools project, but they've helped support it. So I can only imagine that having some sort of maybe free visual functionality in there as like a gateway before you buy a full product might be baked in there at some point. But Dave can definitely see some sort of more machine learning be baked into the future. So I really think this is the future, and this is an open source solution. So this may be something that where you don't have to pay for a vendor. This is an open source solution that over time probably have more and more AI-based functionality baked in, and so that'd be a good alternative for you if you don't have a budget. All right, so here's the new buzzword: continuous testing. It's agile, but it's something you've been hearing more and more from, where you're actually testing all the way from shift left, meaning as soon as you get requirements, you're testing on to make sure those requirements are valid. And at every stage in your software development pipeline, you are testing all the way down to your production. And then in production, you're doing a learning and monitoring. And then in monitoring, you're using tools to say, hey, I notice, you can use an AI tool to say, I noticed that response times the previous month have been at 5 seconds, but this latest release, they're now 10 seconds. And you can say, at that point, automatically roll back code before a customer even alerts you. So really this concept of continuous testing, continuous improving, getting that information, getting that feedback, starting from the beginning again with that feedback and starting over is one of the biggest buzzwords I heard on Test Talks in 2018. And it's something that probably we're all used to already, but just something to be aware of. With the rate at which we have to develop software and get in the hands of our customers is accelerating. And along those lines, we have to test quicker and faster. So I think that's another reason why we're going to have to start using our tools better, using things like advanced machine learning to help us make decisions quicker, faster, better, so that we can get our applications in the hands of our customers as soon as possible and make sure they're as good quality as possible, as fast as possible. So automation vendor merger madness is what I'm calling it. I don't know if you know, but test management solutions like QA Symphony and Zephyr were all acquired by different companies. So QA Symphony was acquired by Tricentis. And also Flood.io, which is a performance test tool, was acquired by Tricentis. So what's happening is with continuous testing, as I mentioned, you need to have solutions at the beginning of the pipeline and at the end of the pipeline. And I think what a lot of these vendors are doing is they're seeing, okay, at the beginning of the pipeline, I don't have a solution for getting requirements. Let's acquire a company. So SmartBear recently acquired HipTest. HipTest is a BDD type framework or solution to help you manage a BDD test. So SmartBear had performance test tools. It had UI functional test tools. I don't think it really had this requirement piece. So what they did is they acquired HipTest, and now they, as a solution, they can go to a company and say, hey, we have a solution, end-to-end solution now with all these different tools working together. And I think we're going to see more and more of that just because as we get towards continuous testing, these vendors are going to want to have solutions that can help their customers all along the way. Perfecto Mobile, I don't know if you knew, like in October, was acquired by Perforce. So I thought that was kind of odd. Perforce is not what I would imagine having that type of solution, but who knows? There you go. And of course, the biggest worry, will I be replaced by AI? And if anyone thinks that, I think you have to seriously look at yourself in the mirror. And there's no way. When I think of testers, I think of like Michael Bolton. Do you think Michael Bolton is going to be replaced by an algorithm? Angie Jones is going to be replaced by an algorithm? It's no way. These tools are meant to help with testing, not replace with testing. And if you speak to these vendors, not on camera or not being recorded, they'll say the same thing. They're creating these tools to help support testers, to make your life easier so that you can focus more on testing, right? No one wants to look through a billion logs to say, oh, this error happened because it traced to this. No one wants to do that. You want to be able to know right away, this is why, let me focus in on what I do best, which is testing. So will it be replaced? I say no, you will not be replaced by AI for sure. And if you haven't known already, this really is, what you're in now is Guild Conferences. This is my platform for online conferences. So I have 4 conferences going on in 2019. I have Automation Guild, dedicated 100% to automation testing, all online, and that's taking place February 4th to 6th. If you haven't already, register now. If you don't register, let me know why. Say I don't like it or could have been better. Any feedback you can give me would be awesome. We also have a performance testing conference that's going on April 9th to the 10th. We have a secure guild going on May 20th to the 21st. And we have a testing guild, which is more testing QA, not necessarily the tools, but more on high-level soft skills type activities that's going on in September 9th to the 11th, I think. So that's testingguild.com. Okay, like I said, I appreciate everyone for helping me break my website, make sure that the video and audio is working, and really appreciate it. I'm just going to end the stream, and this is all recorded. Another thing with Guild conferences is the whole live event is recorded. I go in, I edit them, and I pull them into the website, which is like a membership website. So you can view throughout the year. So the conference is not a one and done thing. You get access to the Slack channel and the membership site for life. And learning goes on throughout the year. We have a really good community in the Slack channel. A lot of good participation.